Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to The Disturbing Truth. So last episode, we spoke briefly about how to identify Imam Mahdi, someone who is sent by God. And we went into this law called the law of knowing the Hujjah, which is the proof of God. And we said that it's really important that the person who is divinely sent by God is someone who is mentioned in a will by the previous successor or on the tongue of the previous successor. We also mentioned that this person should have divine knowledge. And we also mentioned that this person would be calling to the supremacy of God. Mm-hmm. So this is a law that we've seen through time that all the prophets and messengers came with. Now, we posed a question and we said, well, what if there's someone who claims, well, I don't really believe in that. How is that possible that this is how you would identify someone to be from God? And we decided that we'd go into a couple of stories from the past, from the prophets and messengers, to see if there are other things that you can look at to decide if this is a divine messenger from God or not. And we went into stories like Jonah and Adam, and we spoke about their mistakes that they made. And we realized that you cannot judge a prophet sent by God by his mistakes and claim to be an invalid prophet just because he made mistakes. And we also spoke about Job and how he had a not so good health and he was in a really bad state. And we came to the conclusion that you cannot judge a prophet by his health to state that he is not sent from God. And so today we're going to go into a few more prophets and messengers and their stories to see if there is other ways to identify someone to be from God or not. I'm Jasmine al-Mahdi, and I'm here with Saiha al-Mahdi, Alexandra al-Mahdi, and Sarah al-Mahdi.
Assalamu
alaikum salam. So we want to look into other stories as well, and we thought we'd talk a little bit about Noah, peace be upon him.
Yeah. So, one other example of a way that we can't, use our own judgment here on whether the messenger of God is, truly from God or not is, whether his promise comes true or if there's a delay in his promise coming true. So one example we can look at is during the time of Noah. We know that obviously Noah was calling the people towards the flood, towards this big punishment that was coming. And there's a story basically. So the angel Gabriel comes down and he tells him, because the people are asking, when is the relief going to happen? When is the flood going to come? Because, the world they're living in at that time is so awful. And so the angel Gabriel, he comes down and he says to Noah that, if you plant this date seed and let it grow into a tree, and when that tree bears fruit, then that's when the punishment will come down. So they're all excited and they, plant this tree and they wait for it to grow. And so it grows and basically bears fruit, but the punishment doesn't happen. So, there's a group of believers at this time. So, when the people, basically Gabriel comes down back again and he says that you have to do the same thing again. So you have to plant this date seed again, let it grow into a tree, and actually when that tree bears fruit, the punishment's going to happen. So there's the believers at that time, they're split into three groups. So there's one group that is convinced that Noah is the truth, no matter what. He is the companion of the will of Adam. He is calling us to the supremacy of God, and he is showing that he has divine knowledge. So they've got these three proofs, this law of knowing the Hujjah, and they're holding on to that. And so they know 100% that Noah is the truth. Then there's a second group of people who became full of doubt because they were expecting this promise to come true and it didn't, and that made them think, okay, maybe this man isn't from God. Maybe this is all just, not real. Because what they're expecting didn't happen, so their expectations of this event were not met.
Yeah, so they assume he's lying.
Exactly. Or they're assuming that maybe he doesn't know, maybe he's not a man from God, maybe even he's been fooled himself or something like that. All these thoughts were obviously coming into their head and they were filled with doubt. And then there was another group, a third group, which actually disbelieved when this happened. So they used a different method other than the law of knowing the Hujjah, and this is why their faith was shaken during this time. And actually this story repeated 10 times, so each time the date tree grew, it bore fruit, and the punishment would not come, and Gabriel came down again, and like until finally the 10th time when the tree had grown and the punishment finally came. But by that time, Abu Sadiq from whom his peace has stated that the only people left was Noah and his family. So this had actually was a method of sifting, basically. It was a test for the believers, and their faith wasn't strong enough to withhold this. So they all fell out of faith during this sifting. So by the time, the only ones out of the original group of believers to enter onto the Ark of Salvation were Noah and his family. Because, they're getting older, their life is passing, and they're not seeing the results that they expected. So, this story, it really shows us that, because, we know that obviously this happened. This is a part of our history, and it shows us that we can't hold on to our expectations. And even if a promise is given by the messenger of God, it could be a similar test to this one. And we cannot have any expectations. And the only thing that we can hold on to is this law of knowing the Hujjah. This is the only way that we can be rock solid in our faith and be 100% sure that we are on the right path.
So, with that in mind, we have to realize that, hey, if a prophet or messenger comes to you and he says a punishment is going to happen at this time, or the divine just date is going to happen at this time. If the Mahdi says, on this date, this is going to happen, but then it doesn't happen, it is not a reason to disbelieve in him, simply because the only, as long as those 3 proofs have been put on you, there is nothing else about the messenger that matters. Even if his prophecy doesn't get fulfilled, it's not enough to disbelieve in him. Exactly. So in Noah's case, there's actually a hadith that says that if someone tells you that's a person is going to do something, or something's going to happen to this person, and it doesn't happen to him, but it happens to his son, you have to believe in that. You have to accept it. So in this case, it's kind of a similar situation, because it was when that palm tree grew. When that date tree grew, because it was actually the seeds.
Exactly, yeah.
So it happened in the seed instead of the first seed. It happened in the seed in the future, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, but it just wasn't how the people were expecting it to happen.
Exactly. Those false expectations, they were put on the messenger, even though, they were, just like in the story of Job, for example, there were so many things happening in the unseen that the people couldn't see. So they had to have blind trust that Job was still a prophet of God, even if he was, even if he had worms coming out of his hands, out of his body, whatever it is, So in a case where a punishment is promised by a prophet or messenger, or especially by the Mahdi, and it doesn't happen, it's not enough.
Make him invalid. Basically.
Exactly. It's not a reason that you are allowed to disbelieve. And also, if a prophet is sick, if he has cancer, if anything happens to his health or family or any of that, it is basically not enough to disbelieve, as long as those 3 proofs have been laid on you.
Exactly. Yeah. So now that's covered, so a prophet can't make a mistake. If they make a mistake, it's not a reason. If they get sick, it's not a reason. So what about family members? What if the Mahdi comes and let's assume when the Mahdi comes, he has a unrighteous son, for example, and you know of. Yeah, and you know of the unrighteous son, and you know of his deeds, and then you're like, okay, you have unrighteous children, you have an unrighteous wife, you have unrighteous someone around you that it belongs to, and therefore you're clearly not true.
Yeah,
a very absurd, could be a very absurd statement actually, because that is one of the things that's throughout the scripture, where Noah had a unrighteous son, where many of the imams even had unrighteous siblings, and like one of the imams, and then you have this very famous story in the scriptures, and that is the story of Prophet Hosea. And Hosea, it's a well-known story. It's a powerful story, and in it is that when Hosea was a prophet sent to the Israelites, and so he was of course calling towards the supremacy of God, to the Israelites, and the people in that nation weren't listening to him. And Hosea, once he just got really tired of it, and no one's listening to me. So then he went to God and told God, please, like, bring a punishment upon them, just destroy the nation.
Yeah.
And so what happened? Of course, then God, obviously, he wasn't happy with what Hosea said. So he said to him that because of what you to teach Hosea a lesson, he told him to take a woman, like, as a wife, and that woman was a woman who, like, she was like a lady of the night, and she was a prostitute, and she was unfaithful. So he took her in as a wife because, of course, God told him to. And when he took her in and he fell in love with her, he had children with her, and he truly loved her. Despite him not knowing where his children came from. And when it came to the point where God told him to divorce her, he couldn't let go of her. And what was the lesson?
Basically that you are calling a punishment upon your people, but when God is asking you to divorce this woman that you love, you cannot let go of her. So God, basically, he didn't want the punishment to come on the people because he loved them, even though they've been bad towards him.
So what was the lesson? Gomer, who was his wife, it was a lesson was that, look, she represented the Israelites, and Hosea represented God, and just like how he couldn't let go of her, and he would take her back, and his job was to, regardless of her being unfaithful, he had to be that righteous husband, and that's what God is to the Israelites. He was the righteous husband. So, powerful story, you know.
Powerful.
And God has his ways and a wisdom of what he does, like whether you understand it or not. But now imagine the people at that time when they saw Hosea with Gomer. They knew of Gomer. Some men probably like really knew her. So imagine what they thought. You're a prophet, you're a caliph of God, and you're calling towards the supremacy of God, and you're claiming to have knowledge, and you're someone, the predecessor mentioned you, yet you walk around with this woman. So,
and you love her and you can't let go of her.
Why? Like, no, clearly you're not, because if you are with such a like disloyal woman, how can you be a man of God? So now imagine the test on the people at that time. So, but was that enough excuse for the nation of Israel to disbelieve in Hosea?
No, it's not.
Exactly. So no, it's not.
And you know, because God does everything for a good reason, we also know that these weaknesses, perceived weaknesses by society of these prophets, they're also a test and a proof on the people. It's like a sort of sifting. You know, for example, like, you know, when Moses just killed somebody, and then after that he comes to Pharaoh and says, "Hey, I am, you know, appointed by God. Now let my people go." And he was performing miracles, you know, to society. The first thing that popped out of his mouth was, "Aren't you a murderer?"
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, and the same thing with Mary, for example. You know, she was a virgin. And then all of a sudden she's pregnant. Out there, she's pregnant.
What do you
even though she didn't do anything wrong, and even though Moses didn't do anything wrong because he did kill an evil person, by society it was a perceived weakness.
Exactly.
You know, so everything God is doing is so wise, because you cannot judge on your own. You cannot use your own judgment at all.
That's why you have to hold on to the law.
Like, we can't use our own judgment, because like what our own perceptions are always going to be wrong, and this is why we can't appoint our own leaders, because we don't understand which traits to look for and which traits really represent. You know, we just see things on a very surface way, and like you were saying, you know, we don't know what's going on in the unseen. So, you know, humans, we don't have the ability to judge, so we really can never rely on our own perceptions. Like, we have to hold on to this law, because we don't have the ability to sense or to know or to judge what's right for ourselves.
I mean, and that's why this verse you see in the Quran where it says, "Do you think you'll be left alone to say you believe and not be tested?" And these are also tests. A part of it is tests too. You're telling me in the time of Hosea, it was a difficult test for the people if they don't hold on to the criteria. This is why this criteria is your salvation. If you don't hold on to it, of course, and you base your feelings into it, it's going to be very difficult, because people would say to Hosea, "How can you know the knowledge of the unseen when you don't even know what your wife is doing behind your back?"
It is difficult.
It is.
And we have many of those examples. And I thought we'd go into a really famous story for the Muslims that exist in the Quran. And it's the story of the righteous servant that Moses accompanied at some point.
Yeah.
So then the question would be, can we judge the actions of the messenger of God? Okay, so let's look at Moses. God told him, I'm going to send you a messenger from me, the righteous servant, and you're going to walk with him. You're going to follow him and go on a journey and learn from him. And in that time, Moses, before God told him, I'm going to send you the righteous servant, Moses thought that he was the most knowledgeable man. And he was so adamant that there was no one else more knowledgeable than him. So God wanted to show him that there is someone else that is. And at that point, when he meets the righteous servant tells him, you won't be able to be patient with me, O Moses. And Moses says, no, I have the determination, I have the patience, and I will be able to walk with you and not question you. And there are three things that happen that shows that makes Moses shake to his core and shows that he is impatient. And it involves very heavy testings. So let's look at that. Let's just look at the aspect. Moses, who is a messenger of God, is sent, and he gets another messenger of God sent to him. And now this messenger of God, which is Moses, has to follow this other messenger. And Moses' position shifts from him being the most knowledgeable to him being the less knowledgeable, and the righteous servant being more knowledgeable than him. And it becomes obligatory for Moses to maintain his faith in this man's word.
Yeah.
And there's a big lesson here, right? Because no matter what the actions of this messenger are, you can never disbelieve in those actions or disbelieve in him and say that he is not from God. So this was displayed through a series of actions and stances that took place. So we're going to look into there's three incidents that happened. Okay, so the first instance is that they come across a poor people, okay? And there's a boat, okay? These poor people are inside this boat. And so they ask these people, the righteous servant asks, can we please go on this boat with you? And the people, they accept them to go on the boat, and they are welcoming, and they don't take any charge, and they allow them to be there for free, right? And so as they're in this ship, Moses, he looks down and he noticed that the righteous servant is doing something that shocks him. And he's like, what is going on? He sees that the righteous servant is like drilling a hole inside this ship, and water starts coming into the ship. And Moses is like, what are you doing? These people allowed us to board the ship.
They were so nice to us. Why would you be so mean?
What are you doing? And can you imagine you're sitting in a boat and someone actually doing that to someone who helped you? You'd be shocked. You'd wonder what's going on.
Definitely.
So the righteous servant, he said, oh Moses, are you doubting in me? Are you doubting in what I'm doing?
He clearly is.
Yeah, did I not tell you will not be patient with me? And Moses get reminded that this question that he had was unacceptable. You cannot ask him. He is more knowledgeable than you. Do not question him. And so in that parent, this man is breaking the law of God, the one who is, do not destruct the property of your neighbor. And clearly he is going against this law of God. He's thinking, oh my God, he is not following God's laws.
He's breaking laws.
And he says, okay, don't judge me. And Moses, he realized, okay, I made a mistake. He repents. And they continue on their journey. Now, they find a child playing, okay? And it looks like a sweet child. He's having fun. All of a sudden, some narration says that the righteous servant picks up a rock and he just throws it at the head of the child.
He bashes his head in.
Yeah, so that's the other narration. The other narration says, no, it wasn't a rock that was thrown, but he actually calls the child over, he strikes his head, and he just takes his head and bashes against the rock, right? And as he does that, he pulls the kid and he just slaughters him, okay? And once again, now Moses is horrified.
He's
of course, it's so graphic.
This is just like what he just went against one of God's laws is murder. This is insane. What are you doing?
Like, what's going on?
and you're killing an innocent soul. It's
Yeah,
just like it's a
looks like an
child.
innocent
What
child.
sin is there upon this child? And the righteous servant says, did I not say you will not be patient with me? Why are you questioning me? And now Moses is realizing, okay, this man is appointed by God. I shouldn't actually be questioning him. So now, he says to him, Moses says, if I question you one more time, that's it. You can let me go. Moses himself says it. I'm not going to question you. It's enough. What I did was wrong. So they continue their journey and they reach this big wall. Okay. So they reach a people who are really rude. It's a city that have these rude people that keeps mocking the righteous servant, mocking Moses, treating them horribly. And they're not giving them food or shelter or nothing. And so these evil people didn't treat them well. And the righteous servant, despite that fact, sees a wall in their city and it's destroyed. And he starts building on that wall. He builds and builds and builds. And Moses is so confused. He's like, what? Those people who helped you with the boat, you destroyed their boat. But these people who are being so bad towards us, so evil, you are actually repairing their wall with like not taking any money. You should charge them for this. So he says, the righteous servant says, look, this is the end of our journey. It ends here. That's it. You questioned me one more time. Let me explain to you everything and why everything happened. So he says, okay, as for the ship and the hole that we find, there was actually a tyrannical king sailing around. He was trying to look for people's properties and seizing them. So I wanted to safeguard this ship that belonged to these poor people because they don't really own anything and this is all they need, all they have. So if I make a hole in the boat, the king will see it as destroyed and they will pass by and not take it. And these poor people, they can actually repair it. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
As for the boy, this boy, even though he's a child, he's an evil child. He will grow up to make his parents disbelieve. He will grow up to give his parents a hard time, a hard life. And God will replace this child with a righteous child. It was as if this child would grow up to become like Hitler. And this righteous servant is trying to prevent that from happening.
Exactly, yeah.
As for the wall, this wall had a treasure hidden under it. And it belongs to 2 orphans. And if this evil nation, this evil city, these evil people in this city would have noticed this broken wall and seen the treasure, they would have taken it. And these orphans would have been poor. So I built this wall so that the orphans could keep their treasure hidden.
Yeah. So, what we learn from this story is like the righteous servant, he's the one who knows what Moses doesn't know. He can see a lot more than Moses. So it shows that really it's just another example that we cannot trust our own opinions, because had Moses been able to see what the righteous servant had seen, he would have never questioned him. And he should have never questioned him because he should have trusted that he was doing the right thing, regardless, because, this was a messenger sent from God. So, we have to learn from this story that even if the messenger comes and he's destroying people's property and he's doing something that seems like wrong to our eyes, that could be hurting innocent people to our eyes, we cannot question him. We cannot use that as a reason to disbelieve in him. Even if he commits murder against a child, we cannot use that to disbelieve in him, because the child could be growing up to be a tyrant like Hitler. And for sure, if anyone had the chance to go back in time and kill Hitler, loads of people say that's what they would do, obviously. So we know, obviously we cannot disbelieve in him, even if he is,
go ahead.
Even if he is defending people who are bad, even if he's defending homosexuals, Abba al-Sadiq, from him, as peace said, and even if he has a criminal record, or if he's a fugitive, or if he's accused of murder like Moses, then it wouldn't have been enough of a reason to disbelieve in him still.
Exactly.
This also shows that even if the messenger of God goes against the law that exists in the religion, that doesn't make, if you go against the law in the Quran, doesn't mean that this person is not from God.
Exactly.
And I think it's like for people who might have a problem with this, then you don't believe in the other prophets. And this is part of the Quran. The Quran tells you you must believe in the other prophets in order to be a true Muslim. So how can you submit to the Mahdi? How can you submit to Allah if you don't even believe or you judge the prophets of old, the previous prophets and messengers?
We cannot judge the messenger if he doesn't fulfill our expectations of right and wrong, because we have to accept that we cannot see what God can see. We don't understand what God understands, so we can't hold on to our expectations. And when we've established that this person is from God using these three proofs, then for sure we have to hold on to him. Whatever he does, however it looks in our eyes and our own personal judgment, we have to accept that this is an action from God, this is an action from the man with the Holy Spirit, and it's not for us to judge, it's not for us to have expectations about what it should be like, or our own expectations of right and wrong, because we don't understand what God knows. And for sure, everyone who believes in religion understands that God knows more than us.
Exactly. Or else why would you proclaim faith in the unseen, like the God and all these prophets, if you can't understand this very simple way of God?
Exactly.
It's one of the sunnah of God that the prophets come with new matters. It's strange how it's so alien for people.
So we just have to let go of our expectations, let go of our judgments about things, and just trust this man is acting from the Holy Spirit, and he knows more than us. So we just hold on to these three proofs again.
And these stories that exist of the prophets and messengers are stories there for us to learn and take heed
to learn from their mistakes.
Exactly. And see, okay, this is the pattern, this is how it works, and now we have to understand that if it happens in our lifetime, it shouldn't be strange because it has happened in the past, right?
Yeah, we've got this story of the righteous servant to think about.
This is one of the most powerful ones, that way you can't judge a messenger from God at all.
And I think we all wondered even before coming here and joining this call, and many people out there, they're wondering, why do we have these stories? Why do we have them? Is it for our children to have fun in Bible school? Is it to think and reminisce about, wow, how amazing David was in the time of David and how many miracles he performed? No, they are here as history lessons. They're here to teach us valuable lessons, So this is one of the lessons that we can take from all the prophets and messengers, their infallibility. Exactly. So there's another example. The biggest one is one of the biggest ones is Jesus. His disciples, they were Jews. So they were waiting for the Messiah. Then Jesus shows up. He comes to them. Here I am. He establishes the proof on them. He was mentioned by Moses and Isaiah. He came displaying divine, great knowledge, and he was calling to the supremacy of God. So they pledged their allegiance to him, and then they follow him. Yeah. So then they're waiting for him. They're like so excited. Everything's gonna change. The world is gonna have justice, equity. We're
the golden age.
Exactly, the golden age, the divine just state that he was proclaiming the kingdom of God.
Exactly.
So then he gets crucified. He gets backstabbed by one of his companions, and then they take him away, and they see with their eyes, that he gets crucified. They all deny him. They run away. They're disappointed. They're like, wow, this, this is not what we thought this was.
Yeah.
So then the Christians, they believe. And the Muslims too. The Christians and the Muslims still believe Jesus, that he's the Messiah.
Yeah, exactly.
And how they justify this, they say, well, he's going to have a second coming, and then he's going to be a king. He's going to rule. He's going to have a second chance, So then the Muslims, they cannot disbelieve in the Mahdi if he doesn't establish what they expect him to establish. There's so many narrations, and they say so. They say it so proudly that they are going to wait until like the earth opens up to the armies, you know.
Yeah, when that one happens, then they'll be like, yes, then he's the Mahdi. Or if he appears magically in front of the Kaaba, yes, now he's the Mahdi. And it's like they're expecting just how the Jews in the time of Jesus expected him to be.
Exactly.
In a certain way. Yeah.
Exactly. But here you go. They believe in Jesus as the Messiah, and he didn't even rule. He didn't rule. He didn't fight anybody. He was actually, like, in their eyes, crucified. So then they believe in that. So the proof on them is that the Mahdi comes with the same three proofs. So the proof is on them. The proof of God is upon them. So if they say, well, the Mahdi is not doing what I expected him to be doing, this is not a reason to disbelieve.
No.
It's not a good enough reason, you know. So then they might use the argument of the Jesus's second return, you know, second coming. You know, like I said before. So but the problem with that is that you could use the same argument for the Mahdi, because then if the Mahdi doesn't do everything that they expect him to do, or everything the narrations say, then we can say the same thing.
He'll do it in this way, in that time, or this. Yeah, we can say many things.
Yeah, I mean, we can say the same thing.
Yeah.
He's gonna have a second coming too.
Yeah.
So basically, the way they justify the past, previous prophets and messengers, like by giving them a fair trial and giving them excuses, like they did with the Jesus as a Messiah, and they were right. It would have happened if he had support. Then they have to be fair with the riser. Like you cannot just dismiss him straight away as soon as he appears, and dismiss him and throw at him the hadiths of his forefathers against him, use the Quran against him, use the Torah against him, and then because then you have to first start off with your own prophet and messenger that you claim to believe in, and use their traditions in that time against them, and their books against them. So now, because people, like what you said is a very important point, because okay, you guys can justify it with the second coming, but what about the people, the Jews in that time? Can't you imagine what was going through their mind when they didn't see that established? His own disciples found were confused. When all they had to do was hold on to the will of Moses.
Exactly.
But they were confused. We're trying to say in this dark world, these things can be very, very, like, you have to have like truly a open, true, sincere heart in wanting God for you to see the signs that this man is from God. And you have to really have a truly, like, you have to really hold on to this concept of the law, because if you don't hold on this rope, it's a rope towards God. If you don't hold on to this rope, the tides will take you.
Because all of it, if you notice what's happening, it's people are judging. They're judgmental. It's like you have to take off these glasses of judgmental. These judgmental glasses, right? It's just an illusion. So all, if you look at all these stories, it's all just judging.
Exactly. But thinking you know better. That's the key. You're doing what Satan did. Yes. Satan thought when God, even though he was appointed right in front of him. So now you're basically saying that even if God appoints the Mahdi right in front of you, the will is God appointing him, because it's his predecessor appointing him, who was sent by God. That even if God appoints him for you, it's like, no, I know better. It's not true. Why? Because of this or this. Whatever excuse that comes up, that just the same excuses, by the way. And these excuses are such an old thing. They're the same excuses the past nations have been using. There's nothing new. How do we know it's not new? Because it's in the books. It's in the old books.
There's every single example, every single excuse that you could possibly use in order to disbelieve in the messenger of God. It's already been used. It's already in your book. The proof is already upon you.
Exactly. And that's what the riser does. He comes forth and just brings all this to light, like,
and this is another sign that he's the truth.
Yes, because only he could make you understand it like that, because only one of them, meaning one of the prophets, could talk like that and bring you. Look, I came back with what my forefathers came with, but you give them a lot of excuses. What about now that I'm in the flesh? Because you can't take it. You think you know better. So one of the main things that people have an issue with the Mahdi, and it's so strange when they know that the Mahdi, actually the hadith even says it, is that the Mahdi, he comes with a new matter and a new book. What does that mean? So it means that the jurisprudence that you know of, he has authority over it to change it.
Yeah.
Just as how Muslims believe that Prophet Muhammad, Muslims who know, scholars and Muslims who have actually studied, they know that Prophet Muhammad was above the law. They have admitted it. We have even had people who have spoken to us that are Sunni that have admitted that, hey, you can't say anything about Muhammad having 9 wives. Why? Why can't I? But the Quran says you can only afford. No, because he's above the law, and you should know that. Oh, I do know that. Yes, but also the Mahdi, right? Yes, but then so when the riser does something, or the Mahdi in the will does something,
when the Mahdi tells a woman he doesn't have to wear a veil.
Yeah, it's like, no, how dare he? He's going against the Quran. Yeah. But why? Okay, so if the Mahdi comes and then he changes the direction of prayer from Mecca to another place, you would disbelieve in him? And when he's actually proven with the criteria that he's the Mahdi? Yes, I would. Why? Because the direction is the owning Kaaba. The Prophet Muhammad chose it. But brother or sister, the Prophet Muhammad, if you go back, how do you think the people in that time felt then? Wouldn't you say the same to him? When he changed the direction from Jerusalem? And remember, in the early days of Prophet Muhammad's dawah, in the early days, they were all praying to Jerusalem. Because that was the direction for the Hebrew prophets.
Yeah.
That was the direction that was established for prayer. So when Muhammad came along, and in the middle, by the way, in the middle of his dawah, he changed the direction. So bear in mind, in the beginning, he was actually following it. So then in the middle, God inspired him to change it. Because he's the prophet. God inspires them to do what God wants. So he changed the direction from Jerusalem to Mecca. What happened? I bet the people can imagine what happened. What happened is exactly what's happening to you right now when it comes to the riser. They were confused. They thought, oh, what is going on? People questioned it. The Jews freaked out. They're like, clearly you are not a man from God. Look what you just did. You're not, number one, we already said you're not a Hebrew prophet. We already had the last prophet, Malachi. Now you're changing the direction from Jerusalem, the holy city, to Mecca. He goes, of course, you've gone far off the religion. You're changing its laws.
They hold on tight to old traditions and teachings. You know, they cannot want to change. They don't want to change.
They don't.
And you know, I feel like we as human beings, and especially like, you know, people who might use these excuses to disbelieve in the messenger of God, I feel like also the same people and we as well, you know, may Allah protect us from this. Sometimes we look at some people in the Bible or in the Quran of stories about hypocrites or disbelievers, and we're like, haha, look at those silly people. Wow, they disbelieved in the Prophet Muhammad when just because he changed the direction of prayer. Wow, what a loser.
People do judge it.
Exactly, they judge, but then we have to be careful, protect our heart from this kind of thing, because we could also make the same mistake.
Exactly.
You know, so those are the same people who probably sit around, you know, at Ramadan, during Ramadan, making fun of those disbelievers. Wow, look at them. They didn't believe in the Prophet Muhammad. Can you believe that? But now they're disbelieving in the Mahdi for the same exact reasons. Even smaller reasons, like what kind of clothing he's wearing. Even smaller, like there's a bigger test. There's a bigger, more huge tests than just wearing a hat, for example. But people cannot stop talking about what kind of headwear he's wearing. What's the difference between a black hat and one of those turbans that the scholars wear? What's the difference? There's no difference. It's a head covering. Just get over it, you know. But they, you know, we have to protect ourselves from this kind of stuff.
It's because now, what is it? The Mahdi, he reminds you of Allah, right? He's being a remembrance of that God exists, and he's a remembrance of your faith in a sense. That do you believe or you don't? Because it's so easy to claim faith in the prophets who are in the grave. You know, it's very easy to claim faith in an imaginary prophet that you think that if you're in his time, you would believe in him.
Because that imaginary dead prophet would just agree with everything you say.
Yeah, because it's you, it's your imagination, you know.
And there must be so many prophets because there's so many imaginations, right?
So what's our point? What's our point in this? As we said earlier, logic and your logic, by the way, your logic and feelings cannot work in recognizing the Mahdi of the time. You cannot do it. Why? If you do not hold on to this law of knowing the vicegerent of your time, it's going to be chaos. If we did not have the will of Prophet Muhammad between our hands, it would have been chaos. You could have thrown everything at us and we wouldn't have anything to stand on. Why? Because it's this will is the main foundation of every prophet and messenger that came. So even if Hosea went through having a disloyal wife and had unrighteous, and Noah having an unrighteous son, or Moses following the righteous servant who did all these things that for a person would think this man is a madman, despite all these things, or Jesus not fulfilling a prophecy, or Muhammad changing the direction of the Kaaba, changing the rulings, despite all of that, and they still come with this law, then there is no excuse. You see, this is the disturbing truth. Your feelings are not your friends. Your senses are not your friends when it comes to the hujjah. God wants you to trust His law, which is the same law He established in the beginning of humanity, which is that I shall make a caliph on the earth. You hold on to that I shall make a caliph on the earth. You hold on to that concept.
Don't hold on to the bits of old jurisprudence. Don't get attached to them. Like, stay attached to the man who's appointed. That's the most important thing.
Exactly. So it doesn't matter, you see. Those things don't matter. Only this matters. Because you can find all the basically there's so much wrong and right in this world. There's so much falsehood and truth scattered across the world, and the lines are blurred. You're never gonna know what's right from wrong until you only have this concept, this law that you hold on to. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for damnation. Let's just say that.
That's true. Let's take another example. What about miracles?
Yeah, so we can't basically believe in miracles as a way of recognizing the messenger of God, even though lots of people say this. You know, you hear actually many people say, if he is the Mahdi, then why isn't he performing miracles? And first of all, you know, Abu Sadiq from his piece, he has actually performed lots of miracles, but we cannot use that as a criteria to judge the messenger who's appointed by God, because actually, you know, in Christianity and Islam, narrations state that the Dajjal, the Antichrist, will perform miracles, and he will come with miracles. For false messiahs and false prophets will rise up and perform great signs and wonders, so as to deceive, if possible, even God's chosen ones. So this is like, you know, these false prophets and, you know, the Antichrist will come with these miracles. So this is for sure not a way to recognize the Hujjah who's appointed by God.
And, you know, remember in the story of Job also, Satan was able to control the weather. He could kill with the storm. He could do anything he wanted.
He
performed miracles. He made Job like suffer. It got him close to death. You know, those are miracles.
Yeah. That's true. But so, and, you know, if a man is there performing these miracles, we cannot trust that these are from God. And, you know, the magicians of Pharaoh in the time of Moses, they were also able to mimic the miracles. So we really just cannot rely on this as a sign, even though, you know, the man who's appointed by God, he can often perform miracles. But, you know, we just need to hold on to these three proofs as a way to be sure. And, you know, if we say that these are all ways a person can determine a man appointed by God, and we disbelieve in the law of knowing the Hujjah. So if we say that miracles are, then we're making excuses for the people who follow the Antichrist. Basically, we're saying it's okay, they can follow him based on miracles, and you know, they were right to be so confused. But actually it's not, because God has given us this law, and he's given us this way to be sure, like who the man appointed by God is. So we really just need to hold on to that and hold on to the man who's appointed, you know, not focus on these old jurisprudence, not focus on our expectations, not focus on the way that we think the man who's appointed by God should be, because we're going to be wrong. And, you know, the histories have shown that, you know, the people throughout time, when they rejected the men who were appointed by God, these are the things that they fell down on. You know, like in the time of Jesus, it wasn't, you know, he didn't come as the people expected. And the same, you know, as we were saying, in the time of the Prophet Muhammad and all the prophets and messengers. So this is the way people really fall down. So this is, you know, the only way to be safe basically is to hold on to this law.
And we have today brought so many examples that you cannot really know by other criterias that this is someone from God, other than those three, this law. And there's so many things that we mentioned, and there are so many more things that could be mentioned, but we will stop here. And we know that we have with us Abu Sadiq from his peace, and he has fulfilled these three laws of knowing the Hujjah. He has the divine knowledge. He came and his name is in the will from Prophet Muhammad, and he calls to the supremacy of God. So he has all that, and he has more. He has
miracles.
Miracles come in dreams, and there's so many things that could be mentioned. And I hope that you would look into our website, ahmadireligion.org, to read more about Abba Salih from his peace and how he fulfills this law. And it's also in the book, The Goal of the Wise. And inshallah, we'll come next episode and talk about another disturbing truth. Thank you so much. Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.